Hi everybody. Today we want to work through doing a tempo map of a song that may or may not have been tracked to a click, and we certainly didn't get a session with that click track or that tempo map in it. This particular song is pretty straightforward here, but it's certainly not set at 120 beats per minute. So we want to start by figuring out what BPM this song was recorded. So a couple of things that we're going to want to make sure that we have going on here before we even get started. That's going to be the metronome setting right here that actually lets our click track work. And also the conductor here. If we don't have the conductor on, then we can't make our tempo map the way that we want. So we want to have that on. We want to play through the song and make sure that we have our MIDI controls open up here in the top. Okay, we can just click on that and turn on MIDI controls. A right click here, or just click on the arrow at the top right hand side on the edit window. Alternatively, we can use our transport window as a separate window. So command and 1 on the number pad, or just window and transport will get that on and off for us. What we want to do is click up here in the tempo setting in the MIDI controls, play through the song while we tap T on the keyboard along with the beat as we're feeling it. So let's try that. Tap, 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 tap. This is kind of floating around a little bit. So it floats around a little bit, depends on where you're landing on the T key on the beat, and the longer you do it, the better an average it's going to get. And we see that it's kind of going between 87 and 89, so we can just call it 88. Okay, so we want to set that as a standard for the whole session just to get us started here. So we'll hit return to get to the very, very beginning of the whole session. We can see the cursor blinking there. Add a tempo change. We're going to add that right at the first bar, first beat, 0 sub beats. Just make it 88 BPM and hit OK. So now the whole session is going to work like that. Let's get a click track going and see how that flies. So we want to go to the track menu at the top and create click track. Once that click track is created, I want to change these default sounds. Usually it'll start with, I forget what it actually starts with, classic MPC or something, and it makes the most horrible sound. So I always change mine, and I set my default to start at marimba 2 accent and marimba 1 on the off beats that aren't the 1 of the measure, so that it actually sounds a little bit more musical and doesn't sound like a speaker being ripped in half. So let's check it out and see how we sound here. Not too bad right at first. Let's try farther down the line here and see if we're still on beat come here. So we're getting some float. It's not exactly accurate. So now we want to start building our tempo map right from the first real introduction of a pattern here. So I'm going to mute that click. We're going to start just working with the kick drum as our downbeat here. So I want to start this off in slip mode. And I also want to make sure something that's kind of important for what we're doing here in this side of our toolbar, all of our options that are available to us, we want to make sure tab to transients is enabled. And what we also want to make sure of is that our insertion follows playback is not selected. Okay, if we have that selected and we make a selection and play it to test it and then stop, immediately we lose our selection and the cursor gets inserted where the playback stopped, and now we're going to start from there instead of being able to pick a spot and play from that spot over and over again, right? If I play from here and that turns out to be a good spot, I don't want to have lost that. So now we have that kept. So I want my initial spot to start right at the downbeat on that kick drum. So when I have my cursor here and hit the tab key, immediately that brings me right to the transient that starts, okay, where this should be the very downbeat of bar 3 back here, if this was right on time. Okay, so we're going to have that selected as our starting point, and we're going to play through and count 4 bars, okay, and then use the up arrow on the keyboard to set the end of our selection where we determine that 4 bars have played through. So let's go ahead and play from here. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so hitting that up arrow at the end of a 4-bar section will immediately set that selection. Now we can zoom in using option in the scroll wheel, or you can just use the T key on the keyboard, as long as keyboard focus is enabled, to scroll in deeper. Okay, so now we're at the beginning of our selection, and that was fine. We tabbed a transient to get here. Now hitting the W key on the keyboard will bring us to the end of the selection, and you can see where I hit the up arrow to end my selection is in the middle of a transient of the next hit. Okay, this should be the downbeat of the 5th measure, but it's not. So we're going to grab the little blue flag that signifies the end of our selection. Make sure you grab it real good with the finger tool and don't just click near it. And we're going to bring that right before the downbeat. And now we can even zoom in further using the T key and make sure we get that as precise as possible. Precision is going to save you a lot of trouble in the future. So now, Option and F at the same time on the keyboard will zoom to that selection, and we can listen and make sure that this is a full perfectly looping 4-bar section here. So we want to make sure that loop playback is enabled and listen to our 4 bars here. 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, so that loops perfectly. This we know is going to be the very, very beginning of bar 3, because we have a 2-bar open space here at the beginning. Bar 1, bar 2, then the downbeat of bar 3 starts here. So we can use Command I to bring up our insert here. Let's go to Event and identify beat, or Command I or Control I on Windows. This location isn't exact. We're going to make it exact. So 31000 means that we're starting exactly at bar 3 on this downbeat. And it's going to end at exactly bar 7. So we can do that. You can also click in here, hit 7.1.0 if you want to add a more precise spot. But all we need to tell Pro Tools is that this goes from the downbeat of bar 3 up to the downbeat of bar 7, the very end of that 4-beat measure or 4-bar pattern. So let's hit OK. Okay, now in our tempo ruler up here, we can see that it adjusts the first 2 bars to play out at 87.7226 BPM, and it has decided that the way this plays is closer to 88.0796 BPM. So that's much more precise. Okay, now we have a section here that we can click in, tab to transient. That gets us exactly to the downbeat of the next kick drum hit. And we can do the same thing. We're going to play, listen for 4 bars, then hit the up arrow and capture a selection of 4 bars. 2, 3, 4, up arrow. Okay, let's option F, see what our selection looks like. Okay, we can zoom in. Again, option scroll or T. Make sure we're right at the start of that kick drum, and we are. Hit the W to go to the end of our selection, and looks like we grabbed another downbeat here. So let's roll that guy back. Okay, zoom in a little more. Let's get that a little further out. Okay, and let's listen to our loop now. 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have another loop. Let's go Command I or event identify beat. We are now starting at bar 7, beat 1, 0 subbeats, and we're going to end this not at bar 10, beat 4, and 896 subbeats, but this would be bar 11, and then first beat, 0 subbeats. Hit OK. Okay, and now our tempo map is adjusted once again. Okay, so we're going to keep going here, keep going through the song. Get that tab to transient to start. Make sure you're right in there on that downbeat. Okay, play through, doing probably no more than 4 bars at a time to keep everything as clean as possible. And once we're all done, then hopefully our click will play right in time. Okay, and as it changes from each measure, slightly varying from 88 BPM, might be a little higher, might be a little lower, it's going to hone that in a lot tighter to the performance itself rather than forcing the entire performance into a solid 100% 88 BPM click. Now, later on down the road, once we have our tempo map established, when we do want to use Beat Detective to conform these drums straight to the click and get them really machined into perfect timing, it's going to make it sound a lot more natural, more like the original performance, and it's going to make it a lot cleaner and tighter to build the rest of the session around when we start bringing in the other elements like bass guitar and the guitars and other things along those lines. They're going to just fly a lot smoother.